61 of At Your Service with Haber and Martinez. You may note that Martinez is not here yet. I'm sure he'll be popping in a moment. In the meantime, I have next to me, right over there, that handsome gentleman, Roger Slade. Roger is the president of the Miami-Dade Bar Association. There's Martinez. He just popped in. Roger's the president of the Miami-Dade Bar Association. The Miami-Dade Bar used to be called the Miami-Dade County Bar Association. We've abbreviated it, lost a little bit of a few syllables there. And he is also a partner at Haber Law, not to be confused with my firm, #HaberPS. Although Haber Law was founded by my cousin and the patriarch of my family, David Haber, who will join us towards the end of the show for 15, 20 minutes so we can talk a little bit about that. But the subject and the talking point for today's show is the Miami-Dade Bar. What is it and why should you care? And we've been fortunate enough to have Roger take an hour out of his day to join us and help us to answer those questions. Because the Miami-Dade Bar is a lot more than just for lawyers. It does a lot for the community, and there's a lot that the community can do to take advantage of what the bar does and Miami-Dade Bar does and what the Miami-Dade Bar offers. So with that, Roger, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your coming on.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Ed, I don't know that you've ever met Roger before. Roger is my cousin's partner. He's David's partner. He's a commercial litigator.
Nice to meet you, Roger. I don't think we've had the pleasure.
Nice to meet you, Ed.
Roger's an AV-rated attorney. He's a commercial litigator. He's been practicing for well over 30 years. And just for a little bit of acumen for folks so that you know, apart from his impressive litigation experience, he's also published. He's got numerous articles on litigation skills and trial practice, and he's very philanthropic as well, not only serving and giving his time to be the president of the Miami-Dade Bar, but he is also the founder and president of an organization called the Heroes of Tomorrow Foundation. You know what, before we get into the bar, Roger, why don't you tell the folks a little bit about the Heroes of Tomorrow Foundation?
Well, the Heroes of Tomorrow Foundation is an organization that I started with some of my friends and colleagues in the education community. I was a board member for an entity called the Council for Educational Change, which basically helped high school principals acclimate and learn how to manage a school. I was involved in that organization for many years. But one thing I felt that was missing from that was their ability to mentor students and help students get into college. Now, you may not know, but I'm a father. I have 2 boys of my own. My wife has 4 kids from her prior marriage. And so we've been through the college application process a few times. There was a lot to learn in that process. And I thought, wow, you know, one of the things we do as lawyers is we read, we research, we learn, we figure out how to do things. And so we figured out more or less the best way to handle this college application process. And so I wanted to have the ability to sort of impart that information to others. So we put together the Heroes of Tomorrow Foundation, and the main purpose of the organization is to help fledgling high school students who may not have access to that type of research, who may not be able to figure things out for themselves, who may come from underprivileged backgrounds and whose parents may not speak English as a first language, navigate and understand the college application process. Because one of the great things about it is that for minority students and people in this community, there's tremendous scholarship opportunities throughout the country that many people are not aware of. So that was the purpose at its inception of the Heroes of Tomorrow. Basically, we have been mentoring students through high school and also while they're in college, get through the process.
And do you guys also help to raise funds for them or just awareness of scholarships?
Well, we raise funds for them. And of course, as you know, fundraising is always a challenge, but we do raise funds for them. And we have provided money for books and for transportation and for food and things like that. We haven't gotten to the point where we're giving away scholarships yet, but we hope to do that one day.
Is it a 501c?
Yes, it's a 501c, and we always accept donations. We have a relatively small board. We got set back a little bit in COVID because you probably know that during the pandemic, a lot of kids were sent home from college and college was delayed. So we sort of tabled things for a while, but we're ramping up again now.
So just so that the folks know, and I want to make sure y'all are aware of that, again, it's a 501c, meaning that any contribution that you make is deductible. And the website, can they do it through the website, Roger?
I don't think the website donation portal is operational, but we'll take a check, and you can send it to me here at the law firm, and I'll make sure that it gets put in the right place and put to good use.
I'll take a check too.
Let's just make sure the folks know it's Heroes of Tomorrow Foundation, and the website is www.heroesoftomorrow.us. Heroes is HEROES for people like me who can't spell. All right, great. That's fabulous. Let's hop on to the Miami-Dade Bar. Tell us, Roger, what is it, and why should we care?
Well, the Miami-Dade Bar is an organization that's been around since the 1920s. When the state of Florida and the city of Miami first became populated, people started moving here from the Northeast and all over the country. Obviously, legal problems arose. And so our founders put together an organization that would provide connectivity between and among lawyers. And so the Bar Association, the Miami-Dade Bar Association, has been operational since the 1920s and has had a long and distinguished history of serving the community. Some of the great leaders of our legal community have been past presidents, or leaders of the Miami-Dade Bar. The Miami-Dade Bar, as it's currently configured, it used to be called the Dade County Bar Association, but we changed that. We wanted to make it a little bit more user-friendly. We changed the logo. Now we've got pink flamingos to attract a little bit more attention. But the Miami-Dade Bar basically connects lawyers with one another and with the community. So there's a whole host of things that we do now, and some of which we've always done. We've always had continuing legal education programs for attorneys. We've always had networking functions for attorneys. We've always given attorneys and the community an opportunity to meet the judiciary, because I think that, and you know this as a practicing trial lawyer, if you're representing a client, they're not familiar with the court system, they're not familiar with the judge, and they walk into the courtroom and the judge is like an iconic figure, somebody that you would never have opportunity to meet in your regular life. So one of the things we do is we try to provide opportunities for the public and for the legal community to interact with the judiciary. We publish a lot. We have a weekly newsletter in which I write a letter to the community, the legal community, every week, which talks about everything that the Miami-Dade Bar is doing. We have a monthly publication called The Bulletin, in which we accept and publish articles from local famous legal scholars. We've had a lot of folks from the Miami-Dade Bar, you probably know, have gone on to great television careers, and some of them have started by publishing in The Bulletin. So I'm talking about Katie Fang, I'm talking about David Young, Marilyn Milian. These are people who basically have used the Miami-Dade Bar in part as a launching pad for their careers elsewhere. So The Bulletin actually is where I started my connection with the Miami-Dade Bar, because at heart, I'm a writer. It's one of the things I think I do best. And so I started by publishing in The Bulletin an article once a month. And that publication still comes out. It's usually circulated as part of the Daily Business Review. And that's how I personally got involved with the Miami-Dade Bar. But we do more than just publish and have CLE programs. We give lawyers discounts to things if you join. And we also are the unifying force among all the bar associations in Miami-Dade County. So we connect, because there's a lot of bar associations in Miami-Dade County, but we're really the kind of the big kahuna in the neighborhood. So we connect the Cuban American Bar, the Asian Pacific Bar, Caribbean, Wilkie Farr Bar Association, and they're all affiliated members of our organization. But we spend some time trying to analyze what lawyers and judges are the ones that are really contributing to the community. Who is it that we can recognize and point out as people who have really responded to the needs of the community and have been giving back? So we have a pro bono award, we have a professionalism award we give out, public service awards. And so what the goal of the organization is essentially to connect the bar to the community.
Let me ask you a little bit about just the nature of the bar itself, because the Florida Bar is the entity that governs and regulates and disciplines and licenses every lawyer in the state of Florida. You cannot practice law in the state of Florida without being an active member of the Florida Bar in good standing. That said, the Miami-Dade Bar is not the Florida Bar. So it is not a mandatory entity to which Miami lawyers must subscribe, correct?
That's unfortunately correct.
And it's no, I mean, obviously it's different, but in principle, it would be the same as, let's say, the Broward County Bar Association or the Alachua County Bar Association. It would be the functional equivalent of whatever other venue has a similar organization, correct?
That is correct. I mean, there's obviously a big difference, and maybe people watching would not understand the difference between the Florida Bar and the Miami-Dade Bar or some of the local bar associations. The Florida Bar is a regulatory entity which regulates lawyer conduct and ensures that the people who are admitted to the Florida Bar pass the required licensing exam, which is the Florida Bar exam, and they also have to go through extensive background checks. We don't have that. Almost anybody can join the Miami-Dade Bar Association. It's a voluntary organization. We don't discipline anybody, we don't regulate anybody, and there's no test.
Let me ask you, I don't mean to cut you off, but let me ask you this. You cannot be a member of the Florida Bar unless you're a lawyer. Can you be a member of the Miami-Dade Bar without being a lawyer? Are there like associate memberships for people who have an interest in the legal community that are not necessarily lawyers?
I'm glad you asked me that question, because this is something that I instituted in my term as president, because I didn't understand why an organization was limited to only lawyers. Why is it that we didn't have an affiliated membership? So this is something we instituted this year. And the purpose of the affiliated membership, which is in force and is open to the public, is to give particularly businesses the opportunity to come in and market their wares to lawyers. So for example, we have opened up the Miami-Dade Bar to court reporters, to investigators, to printing companies, to all sorts of people who provide accountants, people who provide lawyers with the services they need. So we are basically expanding that. Now, we don't have necessarily a program that provides a platform for individuals to participate in the Miami-Dade Bar, but that's coming soon, because we want to obviously have as many voices in the community.
So it's interesting to me because, you know, I'm a criminal practitioner, and I think most people who are not in the legal profession don't understand quite how it works. You know, they kind of figure, because I get calls all the time. I'm sure that you have over the course of your career. You know, you'll get a call from a family member or a friend of a friend that expects that you'll be able to give them the definitive, law school treatise answer and solve their question, even though it has absolutely, it's like foreign to me. You know, may as well be talking about nuclear subs. You know, if they're going to ask me a question about real estate law or tax law, So I liken it to the medical profession, where you have so many different specialties, right? You know, you're not going to go to a cardiologist if you have a foot problem, more than likely, or vice versa. So when we get into this, the Dade County Bar Association, the Miami-Dade Bar, I'm sorry, I keep using it, but that's how old I am.
Old habits die hard. It's okay.
The Miami-Dade Bar caters to lawyers of every genre, right? So,
yes.
For example, Ed and I are members of the Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and we're members of the Miami chapter of the Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. And that's basically a mini informal bar association, let's call it, but really only for criminal defense lawyers. Whereas you guys,
emphasis on the informal, definitely.
Whereas you guys have a much wider berth, right? I mean, you're dealing with lawyers from every conceivable category and practice area.
Well, that's true. Let me just comment on something that Ed said when he said it was informal. I just received an invitation to your gala, and they said that the dress code was formal, so I don't know.
Yeah. You need to find out what their definition of formal is. No.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the great thing about, what you said, Michael, is 100% on point. I mean, I get questions from folks all the time about things that have absolutely nothing to do with anything that I know. I get a lot of questions about criminal law. And I know,
you can feel free to deflect them this way anytime.
Well, I don't know about that.
I mean, I remember mens rea, that I remember. And, you have the right to cross-examine witnesses. I got all that. You don't have to testify against yourself, burden of proof. That's, I think, where it ends for me. So I think one of the benefits that I've had is being involved in the Miami-Dade Bar for as many years as I have. I know who to call if it's not something that I don't do, or it's not something that I do, rather. So I have a list. It's not written down anywhere. It's in my head. Of lawyers that practice healthcare law, that practice trusts and estates, that practice personal injury, because these are the questions that I get all the time. And that's one of the great things about having that connection and being a member of the bar.
You bring up something interesting, Roger, and I've always thought about this with other bars, and I think I like what you're doing. And the thought is, would you expand on it? This show really is more for the community, right? I mean, some lawyers can listen in. I don't know if they're going to learn anything, but they can certainly listen and have fun. But we're looking for the community, and would you expand it to people that maybe don't have an indirect connection to lawyer? Just anybody who would want to just maybe come to meetings and get to know what, because look, we have a bad reputation, right? It started with Shakespeare saying that the good start is 500 of us at the bottom of the ocean. Wasn't it Shakespeare? I believe it was him. So everybody hates lawyers, and let's be honest. If we're going to be honest, there's a whole slew of them that we don't like ourselves. But there are a lot of lawyers that are likable, friendly, give their time, provide to the community, are good pillars of the community. And I think if these bar associations would be able to, that's the first question, could you open up to civilians? And if they could, they did. I think it would help change the perception of what lawyers really are.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, we try to make ourselves available to the community in several ways. First of all, we have something called the Lawyer Referral Service. And it's a hotline that the Miami-Dade Bar has established for low-income individuals who are not necessarily looking for free lawyer services like legal aid, but who can pay something but don't necessarily want to or have the ability to pay a big law firm. So we provide that service. It's a hotline number. You call up the number, you describe your problem. There's a person on the other end of the phone who's paid by the Miami-Dade Bar, and they direct you to the right lawyer who handles and can handle that kind of problem. And the Miami-Dade Bar has done all sorts of things as far as community outreach. We have had situations where we run food drives. We did an event last year, which I want to tell you about because it's directly related to community outreach, which I thought was great. And I'll tell you, just as a lawyer, I never would have had an opportunity to do anything like this before. We planted a vegetable garden in Alapata on a Saturday morning, and some of my colleagues, and basically they encouraged me to attend this vegetable garden planting. And I tried to explain to them, listen, I grew up in Manhattan, so I really don't know much about planting vegetables. No, we'll teach you. So about 40 of us went out to a vegetable garden in Alapata, and we got down on our hands and knees for the day, and we got really dirty, and we planted vegetables, and there was a great combination of lawyers and community members there. And for me, it was great because I got to meet people that I never would have met.
Right.
So, for example, I'm in the vegetable garden. I'm on my hands and knees with my shovel, and there's another guy there who's obviously a lawyer and looked like he lived in the community. And I asked him, so, what do you do? And he says, oh, I'm a judge. I said, oh, really? Where do you sit? He said, Florida Supreme Court. So I thought, okay, this was a worthwhile experience. I got to meet the judge. I gave back to the community. I got my hands dirty. I posted pictures of it on the internet. My kids saw it, and they called me up and they said, Dad, what's going on? What are you doing?
Dad, what the hell?
Dad, is everything all right at work? They wanted to know. Why are you digging in the vegetable garden? So that's a good example of us giving back to the community and making ourselves available because,
before you go to another subject, give me that hotline when you're done with this.
I will.
Well, actually, let's give it to the folks now so that they have it.
I'm going to write it down. I'm going to put it up while you're talking. I'm going to put it on my screen for a little bit.
Okay. And then also, folks, just so that you know, that we have it ticking on the bottom of the screen, but the Miami-Dade Bar is miamidadebar.org. www.miamidadebar.org.
So the Miami-Dade Bar lawyer referral number is 305-371-2646.
Hold on, brother. I got to write slow because, I have lawyer handwriting.
Yeah, well, I'm a fast talker. What can I say?
Let me dovetail off that, Roger, because what you were just talking about before the gardening stuff and burying the justices in the dirt. Prior to that, you talked a little bit about a lawyer referral service, and I want to make sure that the folks understand that there's a difference and actually a correlation between lawyer referrals for low-income folks who are going to pay something versus Dade Legal Aid, which I believe you share office space with, but is a separate entity. So if you can, let's kind of just explore that a little so that the folks understand the difference between what the Miami-Dade Bar does versus what Legal Aid does. And then I would add to that, just so that the folks understand, and I get this question a lot. Internet askers ask this all the time about pro bono criminal defense lawyers. And yes, Ed and I do pro bono work, but we do it on our schedule and our clock. Pro bono criminal lawyers are called public defenders. So while private criminal defense lawyers will do pro bono work, I'm not aware of any network here where that happens. And it certainly doesn't happen in legal aid. Legal aid doesn't handle criminal cases, nor does the Miami-Dade Bar. But that said, let's kind of extrapolate a little and talk about, not so much legal aid in and of itself, but the difference between what you do versus what they do and how it is that you guys do work together. Because I think, I think you told me that they're actually a tenant in the building you own.
They are a tenant. We've had a long relationship with them. Our bar association is a member of their board. We have a close relationship with Karen Lattis, who is basically the president of Dade Legal Aid. And what Dade Legal Aid does is it really provides free legal services to indigents and the kinds of things you see, or for people really who have no money, just to translate that. What they really do is they mostly involved in things like family law disputes, which of course can get really messy and really expensive. Landlord-tenant cases, some contract kind of cases, real property disputes. And they'll provide people that work for them. They have their own group of lawyers that work in-house who will represent these folks.
Now they also do like a pro bono drive, because I've done work for them in the past.
Right.
Where they've sent, I'll get a letter every now and then, either from the 11th Circuit or from Legal Aid directly, asking for us to put something back or what have you. So they're always reaching out to private lawyers looking to find more willing heads and hands, right?
Right. And our lawyers volunteer for Dade Legal Aid. In fact, I do it myself. Our firm does a lot of pro bono work in the community. Obviously, it's not necessarily our focus. We try to stay within our practice area. But if there's somebody that we can help, we do. I've handled some pro bono family law cases, which, as I mentioned before, can be extremely expensive and time consuming. But Dade Legal Aid is really there for the average person who just does not have access to and cannot afford a lawyer. The lawyer referral service is probably something that's one step above that. So in other words, these are for folks that can pay something, but don't necessarily believe that they can pay full freight. And we have lawyers that we work with that are members of the Miami-Dade Bar who take referrals of cases and do them at a reasonable rate. And they work with individuals to make sure that it's consistent with whatever their budgets are.
So when you say reasonable rates, I mean, lawyers are like a sliding scale. I mean, you have some lawyers that charge nothing and others that charge $1,000 an hour. Right.
That's true. So those lawyers are, anybody who's charging $400 or $500 an hour or above is going to be excluded from that. So the type of rates that these folks charge, and they work on volume. So they're taking cases at between $100 and $300 an hour, generally speaking. And they give discounts and they'll prepare a budget so somebody knows what it's going to cost. Or alternatively, there are cases that they turn away and they say, you're not going to be able to work with me on this case. I'm going to refer you to my friends at the Dade Legal Aid. And that happens all the time. But the Miami-Dade Bar does get a revenue stream from some of the paying clients and the referrals that take place. So that is something that is part of our business model.
So actually, if somebody hires a lawyer through the Miami-Dade Bar that works under contract with you, those funds don't go to that lawyer privately, they go to the bar?
No, they go to the lawyer privately, but some of that money gets paid directly to the Miami-Dade Bar. It gets split, basically, is what it is. And quite frankly, it's a minimal amount. The Miami-Dade Bar uses it to supplement its revenue and pay some of its expenses for its overhead, for its staff. But it's de minimis. It's really more of a pro bono machine.
Now, you guys are in that building that's like just south of the Lawson Courthouse.
That's exactly where we are.
So you're like wedged in between the Lawson Courthouse and the asbestos-filled Dade County Courthouse.
Well, we were in that building, and we do own that building, but right now we're not inside. We had to move out because about 3 years ago, the board of directors of the Miami-Dade Bar decided it was time to update the interior of the bar from 1956 model to the current. So we took out a $2 million loan from a bank, and we're in the process of starting demolition and construction for the interior of the building to make it more updated and consistent with basically with community standards, with the goal being the following: to create individual offices, which I'll offer you guys the opportunity to come and rent, for sole practitioners, conference rooms, war rooms, and of course, we're right across the street from all the courthouses.
He's always closing. He's always.
I hope you guys didn't,
Listen, we all got to make a living, right?
I hope you didn't borrow that $2 million from Silicon Valley Bank.
No, that's a good question. No, we didn't. But sort of that changed the character of what we're doing because we had to update this building. And one of the things I know, if you're involved in any kind of real estate business, even if you're in your own home, you can't leave it unrenovated for 40 or 50 years. You've got to do something to make it current. So
Right.
the goal is to renovate the interior, which is starting. We're getting the permits for that. And also we're going to build a rooftop bar, which I'm lobbying for it to be called the Miami-Dade Bar. So,
That's cute.
yeah, I thought it was clever, but it hasn't been adopted yet. So that's kind of the goal.
So let me spin off something you just said because it triggered a thought, something else that I know that the bar Miami that
Can I throw it? Wait.
hang on a second.
Can I
that
just
the
throw it?
Miami-Dade Bar
Okay.
is in, and that is your permitting clinic. And you mentioned permits, and so I want to talk about that because I think it's very important, not only in terms of what you're able to help other people with, but what you're doing community-wise to try and renovate downtown Miami, which I think it was your words where you described it as a ghost town. I had a practice in my office was in downtown Miami from 91 until 2003. And it looks nothing today like it did when I was there in 2003.
Well, downtown Miami has basically been ravaged by the pandemic, unfortunately. Even though the courthouses are still open and running, sort of, the local community has been hemorrhaging because of business closings. And it is, in a way, a ghost town. And so things are changing as time moves on and we get further away from the pandemic. New businesses have to open, but we've lost a lot of the character and integrity of the local community because businesses just could not survive the pandemic. You probably know one of the great watering holes for lawyers and others was the Loja. Loja's closed. Starbucks is closed. The coffee shops are closed. So how do we bring those businesses back?
Particularly that little coffee shop that was right on the corner there.
Diana's.
I mean,
Where?
I have to family courthouse every now and then because I don't know if you know that or not, but misdemeanor domestic violence criminal cases are tried in the Lawson courthouse. They're not over in the justice.
Right, I know that.
If
I get a cup of Cuban coffee to save my life.
Yeah,
if
If I want a Chick-fil-A, I could walk a couple of blocks. So
that's right.
if La Loja is closed, where is Judge Rodriguez smoking his cigars in the middle of the day?
This is a good question.
He must have been sent. Well, he's in a panic, I'm sure.
He probably suffered more than anybody else with respect to that.
By the way, I just want to throw in my opinion on the rooftop bar, keeping with Shakespeare. You might want to call it the ocean floor. That's all I'm saying. Subtle, the ocean floor.
So, I mean, we're really trying to help reinvigorate the community because, look, we are right in the middle of that. And the community is moving forward regardless of the pandemic. You probably have seen the new courthouse, the new Circuit Civil Courthouse, which is rising across the street. It's going to be incredible. It's going to be 28 stories. I think there's 60 courtrooms, 500,000 or 600,000 square feet of space. So business is coming back to downtown Miami. And I think that we're going to see more and more lawyers going to in-person hearings. And while I love Zoom in certain respects, I think you're going to see a lot of in-person participation going forward. The 73 West Flagler, the mainstay of our litigation practice for years, is going to be phased out. And we're all going to be in that main new courthouse. And so you want to have services there.
Well,
you want to have a Loja. You want to see Judge Rodriguez sitting on the outside with a cigar. I mean, this is part of the culture.
We always like a happy Judge Rodriguez.
And he's a circuit civil, so I don't know how you guys know him, but
well, he was criminal for a long time.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he
so,
was for a long time.
so what the Miami-Dade Bar is doing is we're running a permit clinic to teach prospective entrepreneurs how to navigate through the permitting process of the city of Miami.
So let me just repeat what you just said, because I think that's so clutch. Anybody who has ever had to pull a permit for anything, and a lot of people don't pull permits that are supposed to, but anybody who's actually done it knows that it's like trying to come into this country legally. If you
Right.
just sneak in through the southern border, everything's going to be great. But
Yeah.
if you try to come in legitimate, you better have nothing but patience, money, and time on your hands. So the permitting process is kind of like that. It's a nightmare to try and do things legitimately. So how are you helping John and Jane Q. Citizen to navigate those processes?
Well, first of all, we're staffing the permitting clinic through an affiliation with the local law schools. So we have the University of Miami, Florida International University, and we are recruiting students to become trained in the permitting process, the legal aspects of it, and they're getting credit. So it's not like it's free services.
That's actually going to dovetail into our next topic, but that's fabulous, because when we talk about your mentorship program, one of the things that we constantly struggle with as lawyers is a lack of training for young lawyers. You know, you go to school, you come out of school, you got a degree, but you have absolutely no idea how to do anything with your degree. So if you're a doctor and you graduate medical school, you're never going to see an OR until you do a residency. You're going to be forced to do that. We don't do that in the law. There is no residency for lawyers. So your licensing program, or permit clinic, is actually teaching law students how to be lawyers, at least in that capacity.
That's true. And, we have our own mentoring program. In addition to that, we have a separate section of the Miami-Dade Bar called the Young Lawyer section, in which we are paired with individuals to mentor basically young lawyers one-on-one. The Florida Bar has also been very active in that, because I think, Michael, what you said is 100% true. When lawyers come out of law school, I mean, they really, and I can include myself in that, when I graduated, you really don't have any sense of what the practice of law is like. So we have a training program here at the firm for our young lawyers, which I'm participating in, I'm involved in, but the Miami-Dade Bar is really involved in that. And part of the thing too is it's incumbent upon law students to reach out to the right practitioners and ask when they have questions. And we have a really interesting, diverse group of people on the board of directors who are officers. We have criminal lawyers. We have civil lawyers, personal injury lawyers, trust and estates lawyers. And I get calls from people on a regular basis. What do you think about this and what do you think about that? And I always try to make myself available for that.
That's awesome. So your young lawyers division, and I think the Florida Bar limits that to 5 years of practice or less. Do you guys do the same? Where's your cutoff? What is a young lawyer considered?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's 5 years or less. The young lawyers section of the Miami-Dade Bar has their own board of directors. So part of the goal there is to teach young lawyers not only how to be lawyers, but how to run a bar association.
Leadership.
These are the future leaders. Now, several of our past presidents have all come from the Young Lawyers Section Board of Directors. They learn and they get their feet wet in there. They learn how to raise money. They learn how to manage a bank account. They learn how to do bylaws. They learn how to have meetings and conduct votes and things like that. And those folks have found their way into leadership positions where we are now. In fact, many of my officers on the Miami-Dade Bar now are a little younger than me, but they started in the Young Lawyers section.
I'm looking at your Miami-Dade Bar calendar. And for anybody who wants to see it, again, just go to their website, miamidadebar.org. There's a link for the calendar, and there's something or multiple things virtually every day. It's incredible how busy you guys are.
I know it's kind of amazing. I mean, it's very taxing, obviously, for us to provide this kind of service, but there are so many different interest groups. We have 40 separate committees. We have the criminal committee. We have the federal courts committee, the circuit civil committee, trust and estates, probate guardianship. And these are folks who have something to say. It's been great because a lot of this is now online. So it requires a lot less time. We used to have them, every time you would have a meeting, everybody would have to drive there, park their car and go into a room, but we don't do that anymore. So we make available all the continuing legal education you could ever want, which probably leads me into my next topic, which is the Florida Law Con, which is the biggest continuing legal education issue in the state of Florida, because now we've expanded it throughout the state of Florida. So we are offering probably 200 separate credits of continuing legal education, all online, all available to anyone who wants to attend. By the way, not just lawyers. Anybody who wants to participate can attend. My firm is doing a continuing legal education program about condominium law and the litigation among condominium unit owners, which is a big issue now in Miami. But we have, and we do 5 separate programs going on all at once. So it's like a school online.
When you say your firm is doing it, is that independent Haber Law, or is that Haber Law vis-a-vis the Miami-Dade Bar, or?
It's Haber Law vis-a-vis the Miami-Dade Bar. I mean, since I became president, a number of the lawyers in the firm have gotten involved in the Miami-Dade Bar, specifically John Goldstein, who is the chairman now of the Condominium Law Committee. And since the Champlain Towers issue, which I'm sure you'll talk to David Haber about, condominium law has become more and more prevalent and more important.
Anybody who's ever lived in a condominium knows how the nightmare that is the condominium association, which, by the way, is basically parallel with the homeowners association.
I was just going to say, same as the homeowners.
They're draconian groups of control freaks that get a little bit of power and absolute insanity with it.
But that's interesting. You see, that's the thing that I think more citizens need to know, is that these are available to regular citizens to come and learn. Now, you're not going to be a lawyer, obviously, but you know a little bit enough to be able to even help your lawyer out.
So
you go consult with a lawyer about what's going on in your condo or your homeowners association. Perhaps sitting in one of these committees or sitting in one of these classes with the Florida Bar, or being the Dade Bar, Miami-Dade Bar, they'll understand a little better and either get help through the Miami-Dade Bar or go see a lawyer, but they can help their lawyer out.
That actually spurs me to a point, which is we do CLEs all the time. I mean, obviously lawyers are required to do an unbelievably small amount in comparison to other professions, but whatever, we're required to do our CLEs, and many of us do an awful lot more than we're required to do. It's just the nature of the beast. We want to learn, and especially if we have some downtime, it's a good, easy way to spend it, especially online. So when we're doing a Zoom or online CLE, if you have a question, you raise your hand, you type it right into the chat. So what if I'm a civilian? What if I'm a citizen and I want to sign up for one of your condo law seminars? I go ahead, I sign up. I understand if I'm not a member of the bar, I may have to pay the fee to appear, but that would hold true for lawyers too, right? If I'm not a member of the Miami-Dade Bar and I want to attend a Miami-Dade Bar seminar, unless it's a free seminar, I have to pay for that.
Well, yes and no. We do have free seminars. We have quite a few.
But not all are free.
Not all are free, but the costs usually are pretty minimal. The cost for the Florida Law Con is a little bit more because there's a lot more content. Imagine that we're going from 9 in the morning till 5 o'clock in the evening. We're having 5 sessions going on simultaneously. So do the math. I mean, it's a lot of information. So that's a little bit more expensive, but that gives you an opportunity to see a variety of different things. And there is a website that's devoted to that, floridalawcon.com, which lists all the events that are taking place and all the different seminars that you'll see on Florida Law Con. But as far as day to day, you look at the calendar, and you're right, there's a lot of stuff on there. A lot of it's free. And guess what? Anybody can log on to that, and anybody can ask a question that they want, and they do. We do get a lot of.
That was my question, was whether or not civilians would be able to chime in and say, hey, can you answer this?
Yeah, we do. We do get a lot of non-lawyers coming on and asking questions. There's almost always a question and answer session, which follows any CLE event. And all you have to do is go to the Miami-Dade Bar website and go to the calendar and double click on the link and sign up. And if there's a charge, you put your credit card in and you pay. It's usually $15. It's very inexpensive, to the point where I think sometimes it may be too inexpensive. It's either free or $15 or free or $25 or something like that, but it's open to the public.
So that's a really good thing for the folks to know. And again, if you click on and take a look at their calendar, I mean, I'm looking at it right now, and you've got, professionalism seminars, social media in your practice. Just every day there's another one of these different seminars in another area.
Is it easy to navigate that website? Like, if
unbelievably
simple website, they'll be able to find the calendar.
It's easy, but one thing we haven't had Haber and Martinez. And so that's what I want to see next. Haber and Martinez to do their CLE.
Absolutely.
One of the things that,
I'll be glad to come and teach for free. Michael, I can't talk for Michael because, when I call him to ask him if he wants to join me for lunch, he charges me $100 consultation fee. On the other hand, if you want us to come and help out, I mean, listen, if you want me to come and roll a what do you call it, a hand cart, I would love to help out, especially with the criminal, which is where I've been. I mean, I do more than just criminal, but where I trained and what I've done the most was criminal, obviously, because I was a prosecutor, and then I did criminal defense, and I've only been doing other stuff in the last, let's say, 10 or 15 years, 10 years. But anytime you need, I mean, I'm kidding. I'm sure Mike would love to go down and help out with anything you need for criminal.
Well, it's funny because the Miami-Dade Bar has had a lot of emphasis on criminal law. You probably know Sabrina Puglisi was the president of the Miami-Dade Bar, and we have a lot of criminal lawyers. But we don't really have that much criminal law CLE, which I think will be great.
Well, and probably because the need isn't there as much, in that we do a lot of our own CLEs through the public defender's office, puts them on at least once a month. FACDL puts them on. So, there's a lot of overlap. I see David Haber is joined.
We've been joined by the better looking Haber. Yeah, there you go, David. Smile. There you go.
The better looking Haber is in the other room, and that's Lisa Haber. Not David.
David, as I mentioned earlier in the show, David is my cousin. He's the patriarch of the Haber family. He's a very successful litigator. He is the founder of Haber Law. He used to be partners with Roger previously under Haber Slade.
They're still partners with Roger.
Still partners with Roger.
Almost 10 years now.
And David primarily, Haber Law primarily practices, they do a lot of different stuff, but their primary focus is construction law, complex business and commercial litigation, condo homeowners association, and real estate law. But they're not limited to that. David, good to see you.
Nice to see you too. Nice to be on your show. Hi, Edward. Ed. I only know one thing about criminal law, which I will send out to your people out there in the metaverse, and that is call a lawyer who's involved in criminal law before you say anything, do anything, blow into a alcohol testing machine or anything.
The funny thing,
a criminal lawyer if you have any kind of criminal problem, and keep your mouth shut. That's the only thing I know about criminal law.
The lawyers are the ones that take that advice the least. When they're standing on the side of the road with a cop, they somehow think that they're going to be able to talk their way out of this.
Lawyers are their own worst enemies always.
They're the ones who are going to tell the cop about their rights.
Yeah.
Right.
So always a smart
by the way, that's your fault because you gave me one of those pocket constitutions, which you hand out to everybody. And if I, God forbid, got stopped and pulled out my pocket constitution, I'm sure I would have my hands cuffed behind my back faster than I could say my name.
You're going to get, as they like to say, redirected to the ground. And then
now, I've told my children, and for anybody out there listening to, and by the way, for the record, until Roger told me 5 years ago what a podcast was, I did not know what a podcast was. This is my first podcast, but I just want you to know I didn't even know what it was until Roger told me that he listened to these things all the time. Then I found out my wife listens to these things, and apparently these are big things that everybody does, and I, of course, have been behind the times. But what I wanted to say was that I've told my children and my stepchildren, anytime you interact with a police officer, there are only 4 words that should come out of your mouth. Yes, sir, no, sir, or yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. They not only desire respect, they demand respect. And if you provide them with a level of respect, you're halfway home to having a decent communication with that police officer. Now, I don't know if you interact, what you tell people, but
it's very
get attitude like Michael Haber has in general, and do that to a police officer, and you're going to jail.
Actually, I'll share one more time what I like to tell my clients. I tell them, if you're ever in a situation where an officer, now traffic tickets are a little different, but let's say there's a situation where it looks like they're investigating a crime. You look the officer right in the eye, and the first thing you tell him is, "Officer, I respect law enforcement tremendously. I will tell you everything you want to know when my lawyer is present." Because then you call their bluff. Then you stop them from keep asking you questions. Well, but come on, tell me. Listen, you tell me your side of the story. Maybe I won't arrest you. It just cuts that all right off when you say, "I'll tell you everything you want to know. As soon as my lawyer's here, I'll tell you, and I respect you."
Let
And
me
then-
ask you a question, Ed. Let me ask you a question. Because, and again, I'll talk about Haber Law in a couple of minutes, but I want to ask you a question. If a police officer shows up, even on a traffic stop, are you allowed to start videotaping? And if you do, what is the typical reaction from the cop when you start videotaping your interactions with the police? I
Right.
can't imagine it's great,
Well,
but
first,
I can't imagine they can stop you.
first,
It's
yes,
gotten-
first,
it's gotten
yes, you're allowed to
better.
tape as
Go
long
ahead.
as you don't interfere with their investigation. Okay. So videotaping, and this is what you can remember for everybody who's any citizen who's listening. If your videotape is simply something that a human being would be seeing, then it's okay. Right. But if it's behind closed doors or they're doing something surreptitious that they need to do for investigation that they wouldn't let you in to see, then you obviously can't videotape.
Right, but if you're at a traffic stop and they interact with you, you can videotape the whole thing because it's in your car, it's your interaction.
Correct.
Obviously, you can't go into their car and start videotaping.
Correct.
You need
But,
to.
but in your car, you can do this.
Right.
So remember that in today's day and age, not all, but the majority of officers are wired now with body cam. So they are recording or should be recording.
Should be is the operative word unless they
should
turn
be.
it off.
And most times they are, and we have that. Ed and I come across this all the time where we'll be cross-examining a police officer on the witness stand and say, "So please explain why you shut off the audio or why did you shut off the video at this point?" But all things equal, they generally are recording. And so therefore your recording should be no problem either. But it's, the 4 words that you said that you always need to remember, that's your first starting point, right?
Right.
Officer, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to record this encounter. I'm going to record this. I hope that's okay with you.
Now,
and by the way, if an officer ever gives you a hard time or you think they have attitude or you think things are going south, dial 911 on your cell phone because there's going to be a GPS coordinate recorded call locking down the time, place, and location of it. And if you're on the phone saying, "Listen, I'm scared. I don't know what this police officer is doing," they're going to get other cops out to the scene and you're going to preserve that record.
right. But
So,
to the second part of your question, what is their reaction? It depends. I agree with Mike. I think today most officers understand that they're going to be recorded and that they can't do anything about it. There's the handful of officers that are going to give you an attitude about it until you turn off that immediately. I don't give you permission to record. And this is the advice I give most of my clients. Unless you are 100% sure that you can articulate as if you were doing a legal brief at the Supreme Court of Florida why it is that you're allowed to videotape them, I would suggest you don't. Don't be cute if you don't really understand the law. If they tell you turn it off, you could turn off the camera and you can leave the recording on and just let them know, well, I'm going to continue to record our conversation, but I'll turn off the camera. And they might say, okay, fine with that. But most officers, especially in larger municipalities, they understand the law. It's these small towns where you see these videos where cops get stupid. It's these small towns where the officers are not presented with that situation often enough to know what the law is. And when they're caught by surprise, they freak out. So most cops won't care,
and I just want to add one thing to the end of that, and then let's hop on to Haber Law because it's enough with this criminal stuff. What I tell folks is I use a hashtag, like an acronym, an abbreviated acronym called hashtag UpX2. And it stands for invoke the 5th and invoke the 6th. Shut up and lawyer up. UpX2. If you up times 2, you're going to exponentially decrease the odds of things going south for you because most times you could be dead wrong or dead right. It's irrelevant. The cop's going to do what the cop's going to do. And the last thing they're going to do is let you sit there and lecture them. That, as Ed used the magic word, it getting redirected. Well, we have an expression for it. It's called contempt of cop. And anybody who's ever pissed off a judge knows what contempt of court is. Well, contempt of cop happens on the roadside. There's no witnesses.
And they have a saying. They even have a saying that's very popular. They know it. They all know it. After 6 months of being on the force, they know the saying. What's the saying, Mike?
You can beat the rap, but you won't beat the ride.
They'll just arrest you knowing that maybe the case will get dropped, but you're spending the night in jail. You're going to have to bond out. And unless he admits that that's the reason he did it, he's going to be immune because he made a mistake. He thought he had probable cause and he didn't. So you're going to lose all the way around. And I mean, it's great fodder for a podcaster for you to complain when you're at a happy hour, but you did spend the night in jail and you did have to bond out. So
let's talk a little about Haber Law, because your offices are literally a work of art. You know, I don't think that there's another law firm in existence, certainly here, that looks and presents the way Haber Law does. Tell us a little bit about that.
So that's an interesting story, Michael. I don't know if I've told it to you before. Roger's heard it many a time. There was a movie in about 2013 called Summer Interns with Vince Vaughn and one of the Wilson brothers, and they were Google interns. And they had areas like where you could take a nap and you could listen to music and you could relax. And it was like a really collaborative environment. And it wasn't like, you know, anything that you see on the East Coast. It was very California and very Silicon Valley. And I was looking to buy an office building, and I was tired of being downtown. I think I was a bit prescient in forward thinking 5 years where traffic became impossible downtown and on Brickell, which it is and is getting worse. And at the time, I was looking in Wynwood because it was a trendy area. It was kind of like the Soho of Miami. And I collect art. As you can see, I have an art piece in my in my background, which is from the Museum of Graffiti People. It's a graffiti piece. And I identified this building that used to be a sewing factory. And I retrofitted the building, gutted the entire thing, kept the beams and just redid it in such a way, put graffiti on the outside, which is, you know, interesting, and put my artwork inside, created a very collaborative space, a lot of open areas, put in a gym, put in a living room for people to sit in and or to have meetings where you're not on opposite sides of the table. You're kind of sitting around in comfortable chairs and a couch so that people don't have to, in essence, take sides. I got and there's a lot of angles, you know, all over the ceiling and the outside of the building, and the lighting, everything is on angles. And I got that from a very famous international architect named Liebskin, who I saw speak at a Greater Miami Jewish Federation pace setter event, where he was describing how he decided to design the World Trade Center site after 9/11, when he got awarded the architectural bid to design the museum, that reflecting pond, the buildings where they go. And he always utilizes angles. He did the same thing with the Holocaust Museum in Berlin, where he took an overlay of the Berlin Wall and dropped it into the museum so that every turn in the museum is based on a turn in the Berlin Wall. Fascinating man, a child of a Holocaust survivor. And I took this inspiration to an architect, MKDA, and a local architect firm in Miami and also in New York. And they put pen to paper, they made it happen. And everybody asked me, why did you do that? And my answer was, because law is all about what angle you're coming from. It's all about what posture you're in, where you're sitting as compared to the other person, the other corporation. Where you sit at the table affects how you view everyone else at the table and every issue. So to me, law has a lot to do with angles, and I thought the building was a great representation of that.
But do you have a barista? That's all.
Let me say this to you. Nilka Gomez, our fantastic firm administrator, just bought a fancy new coffee machine. They busted the fancy coffee machine from 2 weeks ago. Then they busted the new one.
Oh my God.
And Friday night, she told me, we're going back to the old way where they take the spoon in the little cup, and we have 3 people in the
That's
office.
the best way.
They are experts. Shout out to Chris Utrera and Amanda Gonzalez, who are the best, and Frank Soto, all 3 construction lawyers. The construction lawyers have it down, although they've taught Disha Smart how to make it. I think she's better at making curry personally because I've tasted her curry, but they say she can make a good cup of café con leche or a cortadito.
I'm going to give you a tip if they didn't already tell you from a Cuban. You must have your cortaditos and your café con leches with evaporated milk. If they do not use evaporated milk, you will thank me, my friend. He knows. Look, your cousin knows. That's why he goes
Is
there.
that because the evaporated milk has more sugar in it?
Yes, it tastes a lot better. You can use less sugar too.
That's what they use in flan, baby.
You can use less sugar when you add the evaporated milk.
We got to ask Roger's wife because she's Cuban. We got to confirm.
He
that.
trained me. I know how to make it. Believe me. I know how to make
the
good
bottom
Cuban
line
coffee.
is, it's very interesting about our office. We're very progressive. We're very our employees. There's a tremendous emphasis on firm culture and well-being of employees. We have people who work from home full-time, people who work from home part-time. We have offices that are used as hotel offices. Very progressive in our approach to lawyering. We will probably get very involved in artificial intelligence and use of that for lawyers because, quite frankly, it's going to happen whether people like it or not. So you better embrace it and figure out how to use it effectively. It can be used effectively. Lawyers have to do the thinking, but artificial intelligence can do a lot of work to assist. We really are forward thinking in our technology, in our computers, in our software, and in our approach to life. We try to have a work-life balance. We have a massage therapist that comes in on Thursdays. Shout out to Elizabeth Bostic, our therapist.
I'm in. When do I start?
And we have nails on Tuesdays, so.
Forget it, Ed. I've been trying to get Haber Law to open up a criminal section for 25 years. And
not happening.
Unlike artificial intelligence, which is unavoidable.
No, we're very focused on real estate, construction, business litigation, and condominium law. We have board certified condo lawyers and construction lawyers. We have 25 going on 26 lawyers next week, which is, when Roger, when you came to the firm, we were like 4 or 5 people.
5.
So, we have approximately 50 employees, 25 lawyers. We're very proud of our position in the community and the work that we've done. We do a lot of pro bono activity. We do a lot of charity work. We have a school right next to the office in Wynwood, which is like a charter school that we support. We support the Morning Foundation. We support a lot of causes all around the community because as I and Roger have taught people in our firm, and Steve Davis, Steve was a predecessor to Roger as president of the Dade County Bar. Roger's now the president. We really believe in community service, whether it's in the legal community or whether it's in the general community. That is part of being a lawyer. Being a lawyer is not just representing clients and making money. It's establishing a leadership position in the community to help the community, the greater community as a whole, and leave a positive impression. That's what we're here to do. And I feel that we have done that very strongly in our firm, and very proud of that, actually. Yeah.
That was a beautiful way to tie in the initial discussion that we had about the Miami-Dade Bar and how it assists and improves and helps the community. That was a really excellent way to do that, especially since you weren't involved in that initial discussion, didn't even know it. I want to just ask you one thing real quick. when Champlain Towers went down, obviously a horrible tragedy, worldwide news, you were kind of like a go-to source for information from media.
Yeah, I was in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, Miami Herald, Fort Lauderdale Sun Sentinel, USA Today. I did an op-ed piece for the New York Times where I called for changes in legislation, some of which have been adopted. And I wrote another op-ed piece for the Miami Herald last year that talked about the need to lower the percentage required to terminate a condominium, because there's going to be this pressure on condominiums, older condominiums with huge pool decks and huge garages that have been neglected, if you will, for 40 and 50 years. And the price tag's going to come in some of these at $25 to $60 million. And the people living there on fixed incomes in $400,000 units are not going to be able to necessarily afford $150,000 to $200,000 assessment. So now you get into this balancing act of, does a developer come in to these beautiful, views, these waterfront sites on the bay or on the ocean, and you look at those sites and say, boy, you could put up a brand new luxury unit and get $2,500 to $3,000 a square foot or $1,500 a square foot. And the problem is you have all these people who don't want to leave, and you have these other people who want to sell. So nothing's getting done to fix the condominium because everybody's in this state of flux. So the goal has to be to either fix it or terminate it. It can't be letting it sit there for another year or two, especially after Champlain Towers. And I think there were a lot of lessons to learn from building officials who have allowed buildings to go on for too long without, letting them kick the can down the road. Boards who had pressure from unit owners to not increase reserves or to waive reserves instead of having reserves. And the days of everybody pushing down the road, paying for their maintenance is over. So I think what you're going to find is a lot of changes in the real estate market as it relates to condominiums. It's going to be much more expensive to live in a condominium. And what we're going to have is tremendous pressure on the real estate market. We already have it in the rental community. I mean, everybody out there is seeing what rental prices are. They went from $1,500 a unit for a one bedroom or $1,000 a unit to $2,200, $2,500, $3,000 for one bedroom. Where are people supposed to live who work in downtown, in Miami Beach, in Aventura? If they live in Homestead, it's an hour and a half drive given our traffic problem. So we have a housing crisis. I assert that housing crisis is going to get worse because as these condos get terminated and as those people in $300,000 units get removed, where are they going to go? How are they going to afford it? We have a real problem with lower income, lower middle income, and middle income people in South Florida. And we're going to continue to have this problem until we address both housing and transportation. And those are issues that are at the forefront of the community right now, because as we're evolving as a community, and let's face it, everybody wants to move to South Florida, or I should say everybody from New York and Boston.
All the conservatives from New York and Boston are coming.
People who don't want to get hit with those high taxes, and who feel that the government up there is ineffective. And I'm not casting aspersions one way or the other, but there's a tremendous number of people moving to Florida and Texas and Arizona. And we are not prepared to deal with transportation and housing in the 21st century. We are, quite frankly, we're way behind, the curve here.
We are. You're right.
Well, that takes us quite astray from our topic, but interesting nonetheless. David, thank you for coming on.
It is my pleasure. My pleasure.
It's nice to have you. This is what I call the intersection of Haber Law and #HaberPA. Although I enjoy it much more on your boat, it's just as fine on your first podcast.
Fishing Lawyer 305. If you want to follow us or follow us on Facebook at Haber Law. I don't know what a hashtag is, but I presume it has something to do with Instagram.
Guys, thank you very much. Roger, thank you so much for coming on. We really
Thank you guys. I really enjoyed it.
Ed, thank you. I hope that the audience has gotten some good stuff out of this. Please remember to go on to the Miami-Dade Bar website. Take a look at their calendar. Citizens are free to attend. Welcome to attend, rather. Maybe not free, but welcome to attend and participate. And again, this has been a great show. I can't thank you guys enough for your generosity for being here today.
Thanks for having us, and thanks for what you do in the community with your podcasts.
You guys.
I see you post them, and I'm sure they're very informative for people. Thank you.
I hope so. It's our only wish is to be at their service. We'll see you all next week at episode 62 on the 20th. And for that, wish you all a great day. And our producers will get this thing uploaded to YouTube, and I will put the links forth on social media. Thank
Thanks
you all
a lot,
again.
Good meeting
and
you,
we'll
Ed.
see you next week.
Okay. Bye.